Stay frosty, sniper.
So Burning Lands is dead, right? That's old news already. So let me start from the top of my kind of synopsis of what I understand. I honestly have not been following this game a lot. As the Kickstarter has been launched, and this happened like prior to the Kickstarter, I suppose that like the developers were not happy with the way Chance was running things. They wanted to go ahead and hire a board of directors, reconsider their contracts, and get paid because they haven't been paid. Obviously, they have to wait for the Kickstarter, but like some of it was about pay, but it was more so just like about who's in control, making sure they were guaranteed to get paid at some point in time, things like that. So today, a little earlier, like 7 p.m. Eastern, November 11th, the developers, which there's like a total of 20, including Chance, something like that, and
Right.
19 of them just announced that they are on strike and they're making this public and that they're no longer working on Burning Lands. So like basically no one's supporting it at all. The developers wrote and all signed a specific page here and posted this in the Discord. So, dear Burning Lands community, again, this is from the developers, signed by like 19 of them or so. We, the development team, make this announcement with heavy hearts. Please understand that we put a lot of time and effort into this project. However, we no longer feel we can continue to work on this game under the current conditions. This project began with a team of passionate modders attempting the monumental task of making our own game from scratch. When we started development back in early 2020, there was a strong sense that each of us have a pivotal role to play in the project's success, and that none of us would be able to do this alone. Over the years since, team members have joined us to share both the considerable effort required and the joys of seeing the game take shape. Burning Lands would not be what it is today without every individual that has contributed their time over the years. However, over that time, various issues were raised by the team members about specific elements of management's direction, structure, and transparency. We had many internal discussions about these issues, but they never yielded what we believed to be necessary changes or improved only temporarily. In the weeks leading up to the launch of the Kickstarter campaign, these ongoing issues finally reached a breaking point. This culminated in a team strike to demonstrate our collective resolve. Instead of delaying the launch and addressing the issues, the Kickstarter proceeded against our wishes. In the team's opinion, the response to our request thus far has not been satisfactory, and we have been unable to come to an equitable arrangement. Some of us have been removed from the project for striking, further highlighting that there is no room for agreement between management and the wider team. At this point, we see no other option but to continue our strike. Thank you for your support and for your faith in our efforts so far. This excitement was the lifeblood of our day-to-day work, and we couldn't have accomplished what we have without you. Regards, the Burning Land development team. So we all went into a voice chat, and it was a public voice chat under their development stream voice chat. So Chance was there, which I'm very surprised that he joined, which I'll give him, like, he had some balls going against the entire community, dude. Tons of people. Everyone's just giving Chance the business. Devs are talking, like community members are talking, and Chance is talking. So again, kudos to Chance for like being there, and we'll listen to bits and pieces here. I think Alpine, we can kind of cut through it. So Chance, again, the lead dev, or the lead director. Over 3 years, there have been a lot of different developers. The current team are talented individuals who understand the vision and passion behind the project. After months of delay, we were ready for Kickstarter. 5 hours ahead of going live, I was thrown a curveball and was given a list of terms to abide by. 1. Step down as director and project lead immediately. 2. Bring on a board of directors. 3. Take up a standard level design role under an appointed design lead. And 4. financial transparency, which was underway, awaiting an Australian business account acceptance. I tried to address these matters before the Kickstarter went live, initiated 3 calls, and none were answered. The next call was scheduled, in which I told them to be present within the community whilst these talks were being initiated and acted on. This did not happen. I was completely ignored. There was no answer to the questions I posed in regards to how the team would be best, like some of these some of these terms be actioned. Even prior to these issues, developers were being sourced for future development, and a partnership is underway. The recent actions is disappointing for me. This is a matter of business, and whilst I understand that there was a pattern of miscommunication, taking these complaints publicly, putting the project in jeopardy, and ruining the game's reputation, a game that we all love, is disheartening. I take responsibility for the things that I have done, but there has been little belief and understanding in the actions they have taken. Whilst this is an upsetting moment in time, the door is open for discussion, and I'm happy to have discussions with the current and previous team members of the development team who would like to discuss more about working on the project and what the future could look like. So that is the two sides of the kind of like story there.
So I backed the Kickstarter before it launched, like on a personal level with the developers. I won't be able to nor expect to pull my funding from it, but I can definitely understand and people pulling their pledges from the Kickstarter. Just that's a lot of turmoil to happen at this stage in development. I'd really like to get my hands on the list of demands that were stated that occurred 5 hours prior to Kickstarter launch. Like I'd like to see what was put his direction.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
And
you
I
know
don't
what I
think
mean?
that's something we'll know. I think
No,
that'll
of course not. No,
close.
we'll never.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll definitely never see the light of day unless one of the devs decides to leak it.
If you are going to truly be the lead on this project and taking the reins of this project, what are you planning on doing at this point to talk to your original dev team to try and figure out some semblance of a common ground that you guys can come to, whether that is you still in the position or whether or not their demands, that you step down? I don't know what those details are. At this point, I'm not looking at what those details are. What steps are you going to take to reach out to your dev team who are currently on strike in order to break the strike and come to amicable terms to bring them back on the project?
That was a great question from I don't know who, but a guy. So this is gonna answer your question, kind of in reference to, like, what's his next steps, and like, is he gonna let it go? Like I get it.
What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I've already done what I can. I've left the door open for them to continue the discussions with me, and they have chosen to not do so until they decide to come to me and engage in these conversations. I'm not going to be chasing them.
What do you what do you think on that? Like, what do you think on that response? I mean, no, I've already done what I can. Like
that doesn't come off like a good PR response, I'll be honest.
Exactly that. Like, that's just, I don't know. I think that would run up anyone the wrong way. Like, I've already done what I can. Like, I mean, at least, like, yeah, I'd be happy to review, our options. Like, at this point, like, it's already public, right? So I get it. His options are limited. They've lost something like $20,000 already, right? So, like,
yeah, and it's continuing to tank as we speak. Once this sort of a wedge is driven between a lead developer and all of the other developers around him, I don't foresee this ever really being fixed.
I get it. A boss doesn't have to be the most liked person in the room, and they're never going to be the most liked person.
Honestly, I don't think they should be the most liked person in the room, because there is an authoritarian aspect that you'll lose if you're trying to sit there and play patty cake with everybody.
The key is that they just need to be respected. And it sounds like the respect wasn't going both ways, like, in this situation. Like, I mean, when we hear the devs a little later, like, there was a lot of just issues they were facing as well. So I don't know.
If I could say something just as a customer, it is pretty shady from my perspective to put into something with this happening in the background. It would have definitely influenced my decision to back a game if I knew that the dev team was on strike. I don't really have a question there. I just wanted to provide a little feedback.
That's fair.
You said
That's absolutely makes
To,
sense.
so, thing that I was going to say is it a little bit deceptive or anything in regards to that kind of information being withheld from the community? Yes, but at the same time, no, because the project itself isn't the developers. People come and go at the end of the day, and the wheel just keeps on turning. As cliche as it is, it just so happens that it seems to be a lot of the people on the ship or on the wheel. But either way, it will still continue to keep. Well, it could be most, it could be all. Either way, at the end of the day, it's
I want to make sure you understand
people
what
still
you
get
just
replaced.
said. The entire dev team that have been working on this for 4 years, that are the passion behind this project. You are saying people come and go and can easily be replaced. You're saying that the entire project and the passion that was driving it can be replaced.
If they want to have these discussions, I've left the door open for the last 10 days for them to approach me with this information.
If you left the door open, why did you delete the main discussions chat that we were using to discuss?
I didn't. I hit it.
Well, you hit it. We can't. We can't.
Oh, yeah,
We
I know.
it. We can't.
That's the devs talking, by the way.
You've asked me a question. You've asked me a question. I'm trying to answer it. I hid that just before the call went live because I was suggested to take the screenshots, but I'm on my laptop and I can't really screenshot that stuff at the moment. So I've hidden it at the moment. And plus, there's also multiple channels that you can reach out onto me. You can set up a fucking DM. You can use all the other channels. Literally, for the past, what is it? 2.5 hours. No. Just give me a second. For the last 2.5 hours, you've not had access to that one channel where the communication was had. But for the past 10 days, you've had access to it. So do not go telling me that you're open to communication right this minute to have that discussion when you've had 10 days.
Counterpoint.
The amount of I don't know, this.
That's what I was saying earlier. You've got that divide of just bickering between Chance and the devs. It's
just like airing out dirty laundry.
It's a cancer that'll just grow.
If it were me in Chance's position, right, none of this would be in public view at all.
Well, I mean, let's be so the devs brought it to the public with the statement that they released, right? And then
he makes one statement, hey, I respect their decision or whatever the case is. We'll circle back. Thank you so much for supporting and thank you for all the hard work they put in. We'll come out with a joint statement at a later time. Done. Don't say anything. Don't go into a live voice chat and air out your dirty laundry with them.
The Kickstarter would probably stall at that point regardless. Or
of
lose it, maybe, obviously you'd probably still see people pulling their pledges, but you
now
wouldn't
it's
see
even
the
worse
mass. Well, right. You're getting a mass exodus at this point.
And now the devs are never gonna come back at all. Because he's just going back and forth with them.
At best, he would only get a portion of them to come back. I guarantee there's burned bridges now that are irreparable.
A lot to start this whole entire thing off with is...
So this is the dev perspective.
None of the devs knew exactly when the Kickstarter was going to go live until the day that it happened, when we all received a message, hey, Kickstarter's going out today, hell or high water, which made us all kind of respond back to it and saying, well, hey, you didn't communicate that to us, and we're all very much unhappy with what's going on right now in the project internally. Now, we said, that's fine. If you want to have the Kickstarter go live, that's plenty fine, but there needs to be a resolution before the end of it. And we simply were bringing up things where there was just a lot of unprofessional things that were happening, and we wanted to bring the capacity of the whole entire project in the studio up to a professional level. And we kept the strike silent at first, and we said, listen, we get it. The first response we got back from him was a lot of, yes, I agree with this. Yes, I agree with this. And then there was a lot of things where, yes, I do agree with what you guys are saying, but that's not going to happen. And it was on some major key points of transparency and business relationship Yeah, the initial response, we were very unhappy with it. And, he invited us to an AMA, and we said, we're not going to talk to you until you actually, verbally agree to all of our points. So when he made 2 attempts to contact us, we just both times pointed back to the initial message and said, listen, you said, these are all reasonable points. Like, we're not trying to take ownership away from you. We're just trying to take the time to say, hey, there's no real successful companies out there that have one sole director in charge of everything. They have a
Which is
board
fair.
of directors to be successful
Most
when
of
it
them
comes to
do.
the video game world. So, Blizzard and Activision from like indie to AAA, that's the best way it could have gone.
Right.
That's kind of how we were wanting to handle everything. And then there's just a lot of professional things that were happening behind the scenes that shouldn't have just been happening, with people being, verbally abused, and, sexual imagery being posed.
Whoa.
And then,
Nothing wrong with
a lot
that.
of
Nothing wrong with that.
explicit.
Completely
Let's just
different.
clarify.
So we reached out to him in the developer channels, and then we followed up. We eventually did get in a 2-hour phone call where we appointed just one developer on our side to talk with him, and I was the facilitator back and forth. We have it recorded. I will ask for his permission if we can publish that.
Ooh.
Because I think ultimately it's, yes, everything needs to be ran as a business, and all the emotions should be set aside. So
100%.
when that's being said, all developers, like, we're, all emotionally attached to the project, and we're also like really attached because of the fact of like, hey, like, who wouldn't want to have their name like attached to an amazing, project, and have like an official game released under their belt?
I think it kind of just goes to show how important it is to have like a community manager, like someone that is front facing, that can handle PR fiascos. And like, this is a perfect example of like how not to handle a situation.
If both parties had any marketing or PR experience in them whatsoever, they would have made their official responses, which is what happened this morning or whatever, early afternoon or whenever it came out. And then they would have sat there and they would have had their table talks out of the public eye, because you've made it like those 2 statements alone, without any further communication from either party to the public was already going to run wild with that.
Correct. Yeah. But
everything else from that point should have been handled behind closed doors for
Correct.
the next 24 to 48 hours, because both sides would have seen what was, they would have seen what the public was saying, and they would have had a chance to sit there and fucking think about what they actually wanted the outcome to be. But now you've taken the reins off of everything. It's a wild dog, and it's greased, and you're not going to be able to catch it again.
Greasy dog. But
it's a greasy boy.
You summed it up. It's just like there's no saving it now that it's public.
Right.
That's just
you've let it, and you've opened the Pandora's box, because
correct.
You got mom and dad hitting each other at the dinner table, and now the kid's gone and told the police.
Yeah, right. That's a real Southern fucking example, but it's spot on the nose. I mean, you're Jesus Christ. But no, you're exactly right. Like at the end of the day, it's a done deal now, where, if they held it close to their chest, still stayed on strike, like, and potentially like tried to continue to handle it internally for a little bit longer. Like, I mean, again, I don't know what other options they had, but it seems like this was the last option, where it was just like, they're already done with the project. Now, I mean, that's it.
I just want to ask one question. What kind of financials were you trying to get from him? About what?
The pre-Kickstarter funds, where they went, what it was being spent on.
Mm-hmm. So like proof was actually being spent properly
on development or towards the game.
Okay. That's a very fair request, I think.
That's understandable, because I mean, it went to his personal PayPal.
Yeah, exactly.
So to add, well, you might be able to add some more context here, Alpine. So my understanding is there was like pre-funds that were gathered, and it was deposited into a personal PayPal rather than like the GoFundMe or whatever the case is. What was it again? The
so
race.
I backed the game before the Kickstarter. So with my talks with Chance, the understanding was I would back the game early. In exchange for backing the game early, which you mentioned, the funds were through personal PayPal accounts, and I fully whether the game did well, crashed and burned, I wrote that money off when I sent it in. But the understanding was I sent in the money to back the game early, and I would get very very early access to help essentially with early marketing / early stress testing of the builds. So yeah, that is correct, where the money was handled between personal accounts rather than I don't know what account his was linked to, but it was my personal account to something set up through chance outside of a Kickstarter. And yeah, that's how that went.
Another thing that kind of drove our hand to go public is that as mentioned earlier, there was a message sent out essentially saying you can continue your strike and have good faith in the project by interacting with the public and doing things of that nature, right? And so to most that would be interpreted as, okay, we can continue not to do work. However, only a few days after, if I'm remembering things correctly, we began certain developers began receiving letters saying if they do not begin providing materials by X deadline, then they could face termination, which a few developers actually did. And that was another factor that kind of forced us, because if he ended up basically just removing developers, we didn't know the extent of which that would continue to happen. So we thought it would as well be necessary to get this out.
Yeah, so we didn't really feel like secure in our positions to continue striking without making it public.
So, I mean, that pretty much sums it up, and that's kind of what we were alluding to earlier, where it was like, at this point, the reason why they went public is because like they were gonna, it was either or, like they either go public, and like either way they were gonna probably be off the project, and so they're just like, fuck it, you're coming down with me,
Yeah,
like,
of course. I mean, that's
I don't blame them. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I understand where they're coming from with that. I mean, it's if there was any chance of you coming back, you would come back to a dead project, or you're going to get kicked off, and the project's probably going to die anyways. So,
and so that's hopefully brings everyone up to speed with what's going on with Burning Lands. I think the entire community can agree that we hope the game works out.
They're either going to have to find a major backer now, like a major
like
investor
or something. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, a major company, a third party company that's going to have a Team 17 to come in and essentially throw money at it, or they're going to have to essentially go back to the way that it was, where the game's going to need to pretty much launch without anyone being paid until after launch, and the game's going to have to come out, and they're going to have to hope that they've made a good enough product that people are going to now pay for it just off the shelf.
From the devs' words themselves later on in this conversation, they just mentioned like some of them will go back to the project if they're able to meet their terms, but others, they won't come back. So
yeah, and again, even when they do return, whichever ones decide they want to, I'm sure some of the passion is going to be tarnished. The relationships are going to be tarnished. There's people that have left the Kickstarter that aren't going to be coming back.
Yeah, I think overall, like, make your own assumptions based on what you heard here today and what you hear on YouTube. But I think that let's all agree that let's not just hate on chance or hate on devs or whatever the case is. Like, I think there's enough hate in the world already. Like, make an informed decision whether you want to go ahead and back the project Burning Lands or not. I mean, I have my opinions that I don't think it's going to work out at this point. I think the game is dead, like, in my point of view. And if it does come out, great, but I don't think so.
I wouldn't blame anybody for pulling their support now. Kickstarters are notorious for incomplete projects. Unfortunately, another notch on the bedpost for a shitty year of gaming.
Agreed. Well, that's all I've got. Alpine, any final thoughts?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right, guys. See you next time.